Hi, everyone. Welcome to Soul Creativity. This is Naven. Thanks for joining. I want to remind everyone if you're enjoying these shows, please like, subscribe, and share. Get the word out there and let others know. We're trying to bring a ray of light into the world, and I'm sure we all agree that we can use that right now. So that's what the show is aimed at doing. And all of my guests, I think, are rays of sunshine and light. So we want to keep supporting that. I'm really excited today to be welcoming Melinda Joy Miller. And Melinda is a ray of light, and she has so many interesting things. We're going to be talking about shamanic gardening. So I was telling Melinda previously, I'm not much of a gardener at the current time, but I am very interested in shamanic, all things shamanic. So I'm interested to hear her bringing those two things together. So we're going to have a great conversation. The live chat is up. If you have a comment or question during the show, please post it in the comments section and I will make sure that we get to it. So, with all that said, welcome, Melinda. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's such a pleasure to have you. And I'm so excited that we're talking about the earth and gardening and psychology and shamanism and just a whole bucket full of interesting things.
Well, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I love it. And thank you so much for inviting me. And shamanic gardening, of course, is a favorite subject of mine. So we'll have a lot of
Melinda,
fun.
before we go any further, I just want to hold up your book, which is Shamanic Gardening, and it's so much more than what I was expecting, and so I just can't recommend it enough. It's just full of wisdom and interesting information, history, uh, just so many helpful little tips. So much more than we can get into during our time. So I would recommend that anyone look into um, purchasing a copy of your book. So, Melinda, can
Thank
we
you.
start with talking about shamanic gardening and what that means?
Well, of course, you can. I want to read you like the name, of course, is shamanic. And shamanic means, from the heart, from the heart. And so it's really gardening from the heart. But I want to read you the very first thing I put into the book was a shaman is one who walks in two worlds, one seen easily by everyone, and the other seen by your heart, deep recesses of the mind, and within the collective spiritual consciousness of the cosmos. So that is what a shaman is. And I believe that everyone is a shaman. Everyone has a within, everyone has a heart, a brain in their heart. And so some people, of course, haven't been trained to be a shaman, but everyone is a shaman. And so I love the name shamanic gardening. And it's really a powerful gardening system that I put together over the last 40 years of researching and teaching all the components of gardening. And we'll begin with sustainable gardening techniques. That's really a foundation of shamanic gardening. And then we have indigenous teachings. And I studied with two native women, but I've studied many different cultures. The indigenous cultures, the indigenous people were here first, and they all have their ways, their beautiful, sustainable ways of taking care of the earth and making, saving seeds, all that comes with sustainability. So Asian design, mostly for me, it was the Chinese garden design and the Japanese garden design. Both of are very ancient. And there was a book I happened to get, 3,000-year-old book that somebody had put together and published. And that was a Japanese garden designer had written this book. And so going through that, there was so much information in that book. And so I put a lot of that together to bring it into a modern setting. And certainly into a modern setting that anybody can do, no matter what your budget. Energetic balancing methods is a part of that. And that comes from feng shui and working with the wind, working with the 4 elements, and bringing a balance of all the elements into your garden, just as you would in a house with feng shui. And then we have psychological principles. And by that, I mean, there's so much to bringing gardening so that you can really communicate with your garden. Everybody does, right? Where does the plant go? And how do I feel? How does the plant feel? It includes shamanic gardening, includes all of the psychological foundation of our lives, really, of our memories. My memory when I grew up, I was so blessed. I grew up on a big farm, and there were swirling butterflies everywhere. There were meadows and pastures full of flowers. My father was a botanist, and he grew everything we ate. He had apricots, and he had apples and pears, and he had all the vegetables, and he had nut trees, everything we had. And then we had our own beef, we had our own lambs, we had our own pigs. It was a working farm. And so I grew up with such incredible food to eat. And it was the days before chemicals. And so everything was sustainable. So my health and my memories of the lushness of, I grew up outside of Philadelphia, and the meadows and the green and all that goodness, the goodness of the earth. That was my playground. And I'm just so grateful for that. And it's because of that, that I am very healthy today. And so all of that put together is shamanic gardening. But the one thing that is really wonderful about it is you don't have to work. Permaculture is really a more of a involvement and evolution, really, from just thinking about sustainability. Then we had permaculture, and permaculture was kind of a feng shui of sustainability. It's like, where do you put things? So it's practical and so it's easy, but it also included all the new sustainable technologies. So there's very little work, and there's no watering. I'm down here in Florida. It rains a lot, but we have long periods of very, very dry where it doesn't rain at all for weeks. And during that time, I don't have to water anything because I have created garden beds and I've planted trees in a way that is sustainable. You don't have to water. So I don't water my pots. I don't really water anything. And the other thing is really, really important in today's world is that you don't need chemicals and fertilizer. You don't have to even buy fertilizer of any kind. And when you buy a house down here in Florida, of course, everything is sand, and there was no dirt when I came. And now I have about 6 inches of dirt, which is tremendous. I mean, we've been here about 20 years, but to dig down into soil, that is really healthy, has all those microbes and mycelium, all of that in there. I always say, I make my neighbors' yards look perfect, and they don't grow anything. They just have grass. And so, but their grass looks great. So think another part of shamanic gardening, and this is any gardening really, it's intuitive.
Mhm.
And it really has what I really wanted to do in the book, of course, and that's why we really called it shamanic gardening, is I really want people to have a deeper relationship with their garden, with the earth, with the wind, with the rocks, with the all the trees, every plant. I have such a deep relationship, and it's very soothing and healthy and wonderful for your health. Not to say you can never get sick. I did get sick. But the other part is, and I love this, this is from Grandmother Twyla Herd-Neets, which we heard from a couple of weeks ago. And she talked about the 5 senses, the 5 senses of sound and sight and taste and scent and touch. But the shamanic gardening, and certainly even Grandmother Twyla, so I learned some of this from her, is that we also include our emotions, that emotional memory of how you grew up. And I feel that we need more gardens. We need gardens everywhere. Even a little tiny, everybody should grow something, even if it's a herb plant on your counter,
Mhm.
because just that relationship with something living that has also a within. Morna Simeone, she was the medicine woman that I studied with in Hawaii. She always said that everything on the planet has a within, a heart. And so it's really the shamanic part of that is getting in touch with the heart of everything that grows in your garden, including the insects, including the butterflies and the birds. I mean, we have bobcats down here where we live. We have bears. I haven't seen a bear yet. And we have wild pigs. We have them, and armadillos. I mean, we have a lot. It's like a frontier land here. Who would dream that it would be that way? But it is.
Well,
But I think
when you're talking about all of this, it sounds so healthy because you're talking about heart intelligence, which helps us connect more fully to all the other things on the planet when we step into our heart instead of just using, our head. And then intuition, that's another form of intelligence. We can think of it as our gut intelligence. And that connects us with the whole universe and all the other sentient beings, everything on the earth. So to me, that's very healthy emotionally. And then the gardening contributing to physical health, and those other things contribute to our physical health as well. So it just listening, just talking about it, you can see the whole system and sustainability. Isn't that what we're all looking for now?
yes,
Not just in gardening, but, we're talking about sustainable systems, switching or moving over to sustainable systems. So it seems like shamanic gardening is really a good basis for, us learning and interacting with those types of energies that we want to bring to more fully into existence, across the board. So I think that kind of
yes.
leads, and you talked a little bit about the psychology, of gardening. Do you think that kind of, blends into all the things I was just mentioning?
Absolutely. The psychology is the psychological aspect of gardening, and certainly shamanic gardening, is we talk about, for years we studied, and I taught from all ages, from kindergarten to college, taught about color. What is color? The psychology of color, not how we see color and how our eyes pick it up and everything. And I think that the psychology, how the emotions and how our mind, how what we think, how we act has a lot to do with color. And I think a lot of people are aware of that, because when you go even to the paint companies, I mean, there's thousands of colors. When I grew up in the 50s, brown, blue. Just think of what we had. I mean, I couldn't have bought an orange dress in the 50s. It didn't even come up until maybe the 80s, really. Couldn't even buy an orange dress for a woman. So the psychology of color, we use that. So, of course, everything in the garden, there's so much color there with all the different flowers. And so when I teach the shamanic gardening, I give people a whole list of all the yellow flowers, all the orange flowers, the purple flowers, even green plants, not just green trees, but they're plants that actually have green flowers. Not too many, but there are some. And then, so we have the psychology of colors. We have the psychology of the flowers themselves, which we really know a lot about. We never think of the aromatherapy. Aromatherapy comes from oils, and through centuries of time, even Cleopatra, and even before Cleopatra. I mean, she was a learned lady in how to seduce anybody, right? In business or male or whatever part of the aspect that she was seducing anyone on. So the aromatherapy and flower essences, which are still around. I love flower essences because they're so safe. You know, the aromatherapy, you have to be careful not to put it on your skin, and it's very, very concentrated. But flower essences is like the essence of the flower of a plant. That's pretty special. It like comes right out of who the flower, the identity of the flower is. So certainly all the meanings of flowers and the meanings that we get from aromatherapy have been researched for many, many years, for 100, maybe thousands of years. And so the cultural memories, the cultural meanings that different cultures put on flowers and trees. I mean, look at, there's longevity. Chinese and Japanese, they love their longevity, which the cherry tree blossoms, they're for longevity. And then we have the psychology aspect of shamanic gardening. We also have, you can manifest and help you manifest your goals, whatever it is that you want in your life, and your spiritual goals, whatever you want for your spiritual life. You can actually express that in your garden. Isn't that cool? I just love that. And it comes out of, again, you know, we have feng shui for the home, we have feng shui for the business, and we have feng shui and these different balancing techniques that are for the garden. So they all fit together. And then we have now the grandmother Twyla taught, I call it shamanic astrology. Now, astrology, what she wanted to do is help people know what their purpose is. Well, that comes straight out of the medicine wheel of peace, the cycles of truth. And I call it, so that people understand, it's kind of hard to sometimes get the right words to explain things. So I think people understood it more because we have astrology, but they're for the planets. And shamanic astrology are with truth. There's 12 truths. And the truths were here in the beginning. So we're talking about something very, very ancient. Again, we're talking about, you know, we have these 12 truths. It's like in our DNA. It's like it's affecting us very deeply, but no one really thinks about it, because who thinks about truth? It seems so highfalutin. But those 12 truths, they've put it together in this beautiful, it's almost a magical, just a beautiful system of knowing who you are and how to respond to peacefully. and how to be a peacemaker. I mean, that it's really all comes from this medicine wheel of peace. So we also, the psychology, we don't think of this so much as a psychology, but I do. It's the psychology of our relationship with nature, with each other, with everybody that lives on the planet. And the native, I love this, the indigenous way of the beauty way is to understand that everything that lives on the earth is part of the circle of life.
Mhm.
And so when we talk about people, I mean, we're used as humans, we're used to saying human. We don't say human people. We just say people, and that just means us, right?
Right.
But I love the other way of looking at it is everything, literally everything that lives in the circle of life is a person. So you have the raccoon person, you have the horse person, you have the oak tree person, you have the rosemary herb person, the sunflower person. And I love that, don't you? Because it's all, it makes us feel like we're part of something bigger than who we
Right.
are. And we need that. We need that. And then it's also a development of we're not going to garden. Of course, a lot of people garden without communicating with angels and little folk and fairy folk, but they are there, even though we can't see them. And so it's all of that relationship. This is a big psychology. I don't
Right.
think that we've really written enough books on the psychology of walking with angels.
Yeah,
But
that was
why
very
not? We're
interesting.
ready. Yes. So it's all of these. And then, of course, we have the four elements. We have the land, and we have the water and the fire. And I look at the fire as the sun and the moon. The moon isn't exactly fire, but it radiates itself, doesn't it, as a light. Light is fire. And then we have the wind that comes through, and then to hear the messages of the wind is so, and that is a shamanic part of us, isn't it?
Right.
And I know that there's a lot of people that never thought of themselves as being a shaman that talk to the wind or talk to trees and talk to the plants. So all of that. And I have this one, the thing, excuse me, the thing with grandmother, Twyla Neat, when you studied with her, she was always, she lived from her heart. And she talked from her heart. And she had such great wisdom. And some of the poems that and things that she has said and written down, actually, because everything was oral. But grandmother was one of the first people for thousands of years. It's an incredible thing to say to yourself, I have to write some of this down now. Because we have to read it in a book or see a documentary. Do you know? And that's what we're trying to do now. But I have, if I can, I have this beautiful poem that she wrote, and it says everything we just talked about.
Wow.
And that's the thing with her. She was so wise. When I read this, I thought, this is like I've been studying for 15 years. This is it. Like a little nutshell. I love it. And it's called A Garden's Gift to Life. We need to, and this is right out of psychology and shamanism. Like, we need to quiet down, become one with the surroundings, and be one with our fellow beings. One of the first pathways to this goal is to feel comfortable by personally centering in with the powers of earth harmony. It's a natural path of human potential that might be aimed toward self-discovery and development of the whole person, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. She was way before her times. I mean, I studied psychology, anthropology. None of this was then. But this is thousands of years old. Isn't that
What's
just
so beautiful, and it's succinct, it's just clearly said that you can understand it, and so powerful.
It is. Yes.
And it's interesting. Like you said, it's ancient. It's been there. And it's like we have to circle back to reconnect with it. Before we do have to end, because we could go on for so long about this topic, so interesting. I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit, because there's so many benefits to gardening that, can connect us. What about for people that don't have a lot of space and have to do some type of small space gardening?
Yes. Oh, this is my favorite, because the foundation of this is creating the little garden bed, whether it's in like a little teacup of, making a little mint that you're growing in a teacup, or like a, 32-foot garden like Thomas Jefferson. So what you need to do is create your garden bed. And it's very easy to think about. You think about the forest, and think of a beautiful, healthy forest. The leaves fall, and the branches fall, and the leaves fall, and the branches fall, and it all piles up, doesn't it? And all the microbes and everything comes in there, and mycelium that all grows and all eats up everything. And then you have all the bird poop, you have the animal poop, all of that goes into the forest. And it's the biggest compost pile in the world. So let's reinvent the forest. And this is how you do it, in a very, very easy way. Now, oak trees are really good for this. And you want to use a tree that is not poisonous. You want to use like oak trees, pine trees. I mean, there's a lot of trees that are, that are not poisonous for people. So that's the one important thing. Down here in Florida, there's oak leaves and branches. And so you take branches. If if the pot is, like a regular pot, so, a foot wide and 2 feet high. Okay. And so you don't need a watering hole. You don't need that. You want it all intact. No hole in this. So you have logs or branches, that you're going to fit the pot. And you have bigger, and then you have smaller and smaller ones. And then you have your leaves. And you jumble all of that up, and you fill the pot up with that. This is very cheap. You haven't bought anything yet. You just really rake the leaves off the ground. Now, so you fill it up maybe 2 inches from the top, 2 or 3 inches. And it's filled, you pack it down, and then you put mulch on top of that. And the reason you put mulch is that you don't want the dirt that you're going to put on. You only need about 1 inch of dirt. We're not talking a lot of dirt, because roots love to grow in mulch. And you want to have mulch and this is the tricky thing. You have to find mulch that doesn't have chemicals in it. And that is very tricky, because when you just go to Lowe's or someplace, I just was buying mulch myself, and literally they didn't have my eucalyptus mulch. But anyway, we won't go into that now. A lot of that's in the book. So you fill it all up with sticks and branches and leaves all the way up to the top. Put a little mulch on top of that, and then you put your plant in there. You take it out of the pot, put it in there, and then you fill all the way up to the top with dirt, with soil that you buy the bag, like potting soil. And then you can put, if you're in a place that's very, very hot, which might be everybody at the moment, it's so hot on the earth, then you can put more mulch on top of that. And that will protect the water that's in all this from evaporating. And that's literally all you do. If you water it down as you go along, like get the leaves wet and everything, that is like a reservoir of vitamins and water. And the roots, that's all they need. They need nutrient and they need water. And all of that holds water. It's like a reservoir. And it's called carbon farming. So you can open up a big bed, or you can have a little bed. Even these raised beds that they have, that's what you do, even in those. And isn't that easy? So you can have any size you want. If you have it in the rain, you do have, maybe if like down here in Florida, it rains too much. So I might have to put drill a hole so some of the water, excess water, would drain out. But usually I don't even have to do that. I just, as I put more mulch and more leaves on top, the leaves grab the water and keep the rain from filling up the bucket. Isn't that easy?
That is easy. And it's really nice to know that if you're in an apartment or you don't have much of a yard, you can still, you don't have to give up on the idea of gardening. I really like that.
Oh, no. And they have so many things that you can grow things in your apartment. They have little things that fit on the wall that you can just put water in. And, it's a very easy thing to grow in apartments now. It is.
Well, that sounds really interesting. And I hope we've enticed anyone who hasn't started gardening to do that through our conversation. Yeah. And I hope you'll come back again, Melinda.
Oh, I'd love to.
So many things we could still talk about. But this was a great conversation. And for anyone that's listening at a later point, if you'd like to leave a comment, please do so. And there's some information under the video where you can find Melinda's book if you want to give any information, Melinda, about.
Oh, okay. It's called thank you very much. The Light Tools Store and Shambhala Institute. Now, Shambhala is an old Tibetan word that means heaven on earth. And I spell it with two L's. Sham, S-A, like shaman, S-H-A-M, and then B like in boy, B-H-A, and two L's, Shambhala Institute. And if you just look up Melinda Joy Miller, Shambhala Institute, and a lot of it, because we've been around since we got the name back in 1991, so we've been doing this for a long time. But the store is just opening, and I would like to put out that I want people to tell me about things that they would like in the store. I'm not really a gift store buyer so much, but I do want to put things in that certainly if people have a favorite kind of somebody wanted me to put a Tibetan bell, things like spiritual things, anything, or even people, make beautiful things. I'm always interested in looking into that. So I just put that out.
Great. All right, great. Yes. Well, it's been a pleasure having you, Melinda Joy, and I think we've learned a lot even in our little bit of time. I want to thank everyone who is listening in or who listens in later. And I want to mention that next Thursday, June 2nd already, if you can believe it.
Really?
I know, a very interesting guest, Michael Mamia, and he's a life coach, and he's going to be talking about reinventing yourself coaching.
Oh.
So that should be very interesting. And so we'll look forward to having him on, and hopefully we'll be able to have you back before too long, Melinda. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Good night, everyone.